Welcome back to the Maven Show. This is your host Rohit. Today we have Lean, the co-founder of 2XU and author. Thank you, Lean, for getting into the show.
Yeah, very, very excited to be here finally.
So, would you just like to give a
Yeah.
quick intro for yourself, like how you got started with your journey and how is everything now?
So I started when I was 15 years old. I started stumbling into the world of freelancing as a writer, basically. I started getting gigs because no one really asked you if you're 18 years old when you work just freelance. And I published my own book when I was 18, but republished later on with an actual publisher as well. And I started my entrepreneur journey when I was 23, when I started 2XU, my current business, where we hire and manage virtual assistants and for my content side, I started in 2019. I started with a YouTube channel, now almost at 18,000 subscribers, which is exciting. I'm also on TikTok. There, I think I'm close to 42K, and almost every single day I'm creating content one way or the other, either for people who want to learn how to be a virtual assistant or people who want to hire a virtual assistant for the first time.
Cool. So, you've been in like space of virtual assistants or guiding people about virtual assistant, how to have one and how to create the content machine. So, what do you mean by content creation, first of all?
So content creation, I define it as like you're giving some sort of either education or entertainment, something. For me, I've done both, but it's mostly you're generating something for someone to consume.
Which one do you think sounds good to the person who is just getting started and, like do not want to involve in bunch of things? So, what kind of content
Mhm.
creation a person should start with?
It's hard to say what's easy to go or start with, just because like for everyone it's different. Like I started with writing just because like writing comes naturally to me, and video was such a weird place to be at. What I did was I wrote one Facebook post a day for 30 days, and from the one post a day for 30 days I created videos out of it. So that's kind of how I got into creating a ton of videos for it started with Facebook and then went to YouTube. So it really depends on what you're comfortable with. And then later on, you can venture into the other formats. But it starts with what you know.
You used to say about the content machine. What do you mean by content machine? Content machine is something like a library of full of content for something, Let's say
Mhm.
we got like say you got a YouTube channel, you got a bunch of videos over there. That's kind of like a content machine you meant to.
So what I mean with content machine is it's basically you start with one major piece of content and then that using that to produce many other pieces of content and then another major piece of content. So for example, for us to XU, we have a YouTube channel basically, which is about 10 to 20 minutes long video sometimes that turns into graphic posts for Instagram, LinkedIn, becomes short videos for Instagram Reels and as well for TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and then also becomes this bigger document within a blog post. So it's kind of knowing that you actually really have an infinite amount of resources when it comes to content. It's up to you how you're going to create that machine for yourself.
After the COVID, like we've been into remote business. You know that. You specialized in the remote business. Yeah. So what do you think? Like, is this anything specific someone should need to know, like, before setting up a remote business or starting up just a remote business specifically?
It's funny that you say that, because today the video that just came out was actually how to start a remote business. For prepping for it, it's very much I found that it's the same as having like a in-person business or a brick and mortar business. The
Yep.
biggest difference is just like how you are getting the product or the service to your target audience. So if it's a restaurant, of course you have like waiters, you have staff, you have everyone else. But if you're just a what they call a ghost kitchen, where you just deliver or have a delivery service sending out basically your food, then it can be done remotely. So it really depends on how you do want to set up your business, because it's now more and more possible and easier to also set up a remote kind of business.
What do you think? Like, is it easy to set up the remote business and brick and mortar business, obviously?
It's hard to say. Remote business is easier to set up because there's lower risk rather than spending lots and lots of money trying to set up a brick and mortar business and not even sure that it will take off. I think that's kind of how I see it, because I started 2XU with nothing. Like I didn't put anything into it. They didn't have the startup capital. I literally was just creating a lot of content. One person said, "Yep, I want to hire a virtual assistant through you," and that's kind of how we started. So I would say it's a little bit easier to do it remotely, and then later on maybe do it in brick and mortar if you wanted to.
If anyone who's listening to the show, like does not know about the virtual assistant, what virtual assistant is, how the virtual assistant can help them, how you would like to elaborate this particular term for those people?
So for virtual assistants, I always describe them as if anyone has watched the movie Devil Wears Prada, or there's so many movies where you have that high position person and then they have the executive assistant right outside their door. That's essentially a virtual assistant is, except instead of right out your door, they're in another country, they're in different time zones. And they pretty much help you do the same thing. So like managing essentially you, instead of managing your business like an operations manager would, it's managing you as a person. So taking care of your communications, like your email, your calendar. We have clients who their EA takes care of their Telegram account because you can give a login to that. It's also managing basically their life. So any birthdays or anniversaries that they have to keep in mind of, or sending out gifts to people that they know. And it's also in part, in a way, also then managing their business. Like my assistant perfectly manages me in making sure that my priorities are on right. Of like, okay, these are the next projects that we're working on. These are the tasks I need from you. So instead of me giving her tasks, she gives me tasks. So that's kind of where a virtual assistant is kind of different by having again a person in your office. If they manage you instead of managing just your business.
What advice do you have for someone who is just getting started with the business, does not have a lot of money to invest, This happens with everyone. So where should they invest their every single penny they saved to make their business grow quickly?
Honestly, it's getting depending on the type of business that you have, it is getting in your first couple of customers. Like you hire an employee or a virtual assistant once you have recurring revenue. There's a way for you to predict basically, because of course an employee is an ongoing payment. But when it comes to where you should focus on if you're still starting off, if you're still struggling, is by marketing to your customers, because it's only that way that you can test if people actually want your business, if people are actually interested, if this is something that could be real, versus like investing all this time into like the setting up like a really pretty website, setting up all of these things. Just test and push out your product or service to the market, so then you can actually see how people react as well.
Awesome, Lee. So yeah, thank you for being on the show. And it was good to have you on pretty quick. And yeah, thank you so much for being in and sharing your insights on the virtual assistant.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.